Welcome to the Pulpit and Porch. I'm Tony Marr, and with me as always is my friend Robert Kell.
Hey everybody, we are so glad you're here. The Pulpit and Porch is where we kick back, put up our feet, and have real conversations about life, faith, growth, and maybe even a little sports and pop culture.
If you're looking for a perfectly polished sermon, you're probably in the wrong place.
Yeah, around here, it's more about those honest, heart-to-heart conversations, like the one you'd have on a front porch with good friends. Sometimes we stay on track, sometimes we take the scenic route.
And honestly, that's half the fun, isn't it? We dig into the highs, the lows, and all the in-betweens of living out your faith in real life. Along the way, we may pull up a few extra chairs and invite some friends onto the porch to share stories and ideas that just may change the way that you see things.
So whether you're chasing your purpose, building your faith, or just trying to live a little more fully, pull up a chair, grab some sweet tea, and join us. This is the Pulpit and Porch. We got a seat waiting for you.
Good morning.
Woohoo! It's a very we record on Wednesdays, and I'm pretty sure we've said that 1,000 times, but
Not always. Last week we didn't record on Wednesday.
we did not.
Last week was a one-off.
97.6% of the time we record on Wednesdays, and so this week has been a week. We were up at 4 a.m. on Monday, left and drove by 5 to Talladega to drop our oldest off for his summer of student life camp, hustling back. And, you know, there were moments where I had to go, God is watching over us. And, you know, there's things that happen. So we get in the car and we're leaving and we're coming back from Talladega, and it says we will be home at 5:41 p.m. We spent almost no time with Landon. We're like, hey, your brother's got he's a senior. He's got his soccer banquet tonight. We're going to get back. And he's like, no, I get it. Totally fine. We get in the car, hit the GPS. Banquet's at 6. We're going to be home at 5:21. I think I said 5:41, but 5:21. And so we start driving and everything's just smooth sailing. Life's going good. We're cruising along. Everything's great. And we get to that junction. And I forget the interstate. There's a little kind of connector out of, if you're not wanting to stay on 75 in Chattanooga, around exit 2, mile marker 2, there's a little junction that kicks you around and you head into Georgia and then down into Alabama that way. And so we're driving back and two interstates meet up here at this one point when you're getting to that interstate. And it's kind of coming from Nashville and coming from Alabama, and they meet up, and traffic is like literally to standstill. For like 30 minutes, we did 0 miles an hour. It felt like maybe 2. We're just eking along, and we get up there, and an 18-wheeler has broken down in the left lane. So 3 lanes of traffic are trying to merge into one, all on an interstate right where it goes. And so now that clock goes from 5:21 to 5:51. We're like, hey, we're still going to be 9 minutes early. So we managed to get through everything and get through all that. And there's a little bit of traffic in Chattanooga that we knew was going to be there, but we got through that pretty quickly. We're still like, hey, we're still like 5 or 6 minutes ahead. We're getting towards Knoxville, and Mel's been watching this for an hour, and there is an accident in Knoxville that she's been watching for an hour. And I'm like, that is going to be cleaned up by the time we get there. This will be no issue at all. And we get there and it is not. And we are sitting in traffic again. And here's the funny thing. Charles Stanley said one time, how many of you, he's like, and I don't know if he said don't raise your hand or not, but how many of you driving down the road and you see a police car, you slam on your brakes? Like your instinct,
even if you're not speeding.
Yes. Because at some point, because you typically speed, you do. And he just went through this whole thing of like, when you're always obeying the law, when you're always in alignment, you never have to tap your brakes. And so I've really tried to live, and it's been something in the last probably 3 to 5 years that I've navigated a little bit and tried to go through to where I don't speed. I'm really bad still when I get in traffic in like Knoxville, Atlanta, Nashville, and the speed limit's 55 and the flow of traffic's 147, that I just get in the flow of traffic and go, yeah, we'll get there.
Because you don't want to be that guy.
I don't want to be that guy, and I also don't want to die. But I think God typically honors, the Bible says a lot about, God honors those who obey his ways and things. So I'm trying to obey the laws of the land and do things. And that's, by the way, I've got a million things that you guys have listened to me enough now. You know that I've got a billion things. It's not like some super spiritual thing. I'm just trying to grow, doing little things that I can to be more
Next year
better.
For Lent, you're going to give up speeding.
Give up speeding. That would be way lighter lift than TV.
Do you ever roll a stop sign?
I'm sure I do.
Do you need a confessional time right now?
No, I'm sure I do. I try to stop. I don't. Sometimes I think that, okay, I'm here, I'm stopped. I've looked both ways twice, but I'm sure I do. I just think that at my age, we all just drive randomly different. But
all right, so our listener is in a state of anticipation. Did you make it on time?
So I'm going to tell this one thing, and then I'll tell you that we made it on time. So we're driving, and I said, I just need this. Literally, my words. We can make up some time. Speed limit's going to be 55 in Knoxville. Traffic's going to be doing 75. I can make up 10 minutes because now, like, we're getting to, instead of getting there at 5:54, we're getting there at 6:04, 6:07. And I'm going like,
you're just watching that time.
And I am. I'm watching it go up and up and up. And I'm like, we can get, and Mel said, I'm just going to pray that traffic is clear. And I said, I don't know that praying for God to make things clear so I can break the law is really how he works these things. And so and she just looks at me. It's just like, I don't know that I had like kind of connected those two things. We struggle through that. There are 2 more wrecks that we end up stopped in. I drive through Knoxville a decent amount. You do too. I mean, we head down that way enough that like several times a year.
This weekend.
Yeah, multiple times a year, I drive through Knoxville, and I maybe don't do it as much as when I was at the Y, but like I do it a lot. And I'm going, this is bonkers to me. I have not seen in the last 5 years. We from Knoxville to Dandridge, we saw 4 accidents. There were 4 accidents that slowed us down. So we ended up being 12 minutes late. And Brody said, I got here at 8 minutes till 6. And so here's what all Melissa can picture. And she's got me believing this, that kids are sitting with their families and we're going to show up and Brody's going to be at a table by himself crying because we are not there for him.
And then you walk in, the door creaks, and everyone turns around and stares
Thankfully,
at you.
it was in Grand Topper Hall. It was this huge cafeteria. It was way back. There were band concerts and all kinds of other things going on. So there was a lot of ruckus. We walk in, and the whole team's sitting together. Brody's having a great time. Didn't even know we weren't there. He's like, "Oh, hey guys, how you going?" I was going, "Whatever." And so we get there at like 12 after. The other moms and dads that were helping check people in as we showed up, they all clapped and like, yay. And we're like, we got here. Yay. But yes, that was exhausting. And so then yesterday, that same kid had first round of the regional soccer tournament and we lost, but there was lightning delays and stuff. It was almost 2 hours from here. And we got home at like midnight. So we drove from 5 a.m. till 6 p.m. and then spent 2 more hours at a soccer banquet. By the way, I wouldn't trade any of this. I'm just old. And then I'm trying to be healthier and trying to do some things I enjoy, psychologically change some things. And so I played basketball yesterday with some buddies and for like an hour. And then we drove to Sevierville, went back down to Sevierville, got to go to Buc-ee's 3 times in the last 2 days. I was just
about to say, how many times?
3 times. 2 days.
Visited your favorite, your Mecca.
3 times, 2 days. So excited. And if we go to state next week with baseball, I'll get to visit 2 different Buc-ee's 4 times over the period of the week. It'll be awesome.
You have a problem.
Maybe that might not be it, but yes, I do. But that might not be the problem. So anyway, I'm just really tired. I mean,
do they have support groups for that? Bucky's Anonymous.
That would be fantastic. We did start like we've had some people in our church that were really just had a heart for recovery ministry, and we started a recovery ministry and a recovery group at our church. And one of our guys leading, I could just go, but I feel like that would probably be pretty distasteful to go. My struggle is I'm
addicted to Bucky's.
I'm addicted to Bucky's when people are having real serious things that are ruining their life. And I go in a little bit half-hearted of I can't go by Bucky's without stopping.
Did I tell you a couple months ago, had my high school basketball team. We were playing our end of season tournament in Gatlinburg.
Yeah, you guys, I knew you were down that way. Yeah.
And we stopped at Bucky's on our way out for me to gas up the van, them to run in, use the bathroom, grab snacks, all that kind of stuff. I kind of said that if, something happened, we'd stop at Bucky's on our way out. So I drop off my team, 14 teenage boys, and I go get gas. And at that Bucky's, they have the world's largest car wash, which is pretty impressive if you haven't been through it.
I have not been through it, but
you can do it
impressive.
for $1 with a tank of gas. And so I said, I'm going to do it for $1 for a tank of gas. And so I was gone for a while. I gassed up the van. Then I ran through the 2 3/4 mile gas station, not gas station, car wash.
Yeah.
And then I come back in. And you've got to understand, we've got people listening to this show that are youth pastors that have led trips or have been youth pastors. You have a group of parents that have entrusted you with their child, right? You take on a certain level of responsibility for their lives and their well-being and their decisions, their actions that they make. Now, this is not a church or anything. It's a high school basketball team. But still, I've got a group of parents that have trusted me with their precious children. Now, some of them would rather I not bring their children back, but for the most part, most of them want their child back, and they want them to learn and grow as young men under their time, under my leadership. And so I've gassed up the car. I've run through the 7-mile car wash. We're longest in the world. I go park. I go in to use the bathroom, and we've got like 5 minutes left before I told the boys they needed to be back at the van. And I go in, and on my way to the bathroom, I see this group that I'm like, please don't be my boys. Please don't be my boys. Please don't. It's my boys. A group of my teenage boys have decided that they would use the money that they had to buy food and buy these giant beaver onesies. And they're wearing them somehow in the time that it took me to fill up the gas and go through a 17-mile car wash. These boys have gone in and bought and changed into these giant beaver onesies. They're like the old pajamas you remember
I know exactly
with the
are.
footsies and the zips from the
there
toe
might
all
be
the
one
way
of
up.
those at my house.
Oh, please tell me.
Not for me, but for one of my boys.
And so I look, and they're there taking pictures in the middle of Bucky's by the nut stand, because that's where beavers would be. Of all these boys, some of them like 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", and then a couple they're in these giant beaver. And then, of course, I look, and who is there? My assistant coach in a beaver outfit himself. And so I shot out a quick message in our group chat and said, I'm so sorry you guys entrusted me with your boys, and I have failed you miserably.
And you sent that picture with it?
I did send the picture, yeah. And said, I'm sorry that I let you all down.
Was your son in that group?
No, he wasn't. I raised my son right.
And he was probably too scared to spend $22 on a onesie.
Who knows how much these things cost?
I think they're like $20. I think it's like $18.99 or something like that. So tax and everything, like $22. But
which is about the cost of a sandwich there.
I do have a Bucky's Christmas sweater. And so, yeah, but yes, sandwiches are $7. Oh, they have created, and I'm a little bit of a picky eater. We've talked about this, but I have thought for years of my time at Bucky's, and like I think we've shared this. Like me and my boys,
thought about this for years.
I have thought about this for a lot of time. I like food.
You really do have a problem.
Well, no, I think about things like this when I walk into a place. I'm going, this is something you should do. Like I saw a comedian yesterday go, or like Sonic said, the fish sandwich is back. He said, I never knew it was gone. Is it? Who knew Arby's or who knew Sonic had a fish sandwich? I had no clue. But I think about food things like this. And so, and like I've said this before, like my boys and I, when the one in Sevierville opened, we went on opening day. Like I took time off work. Like we loaded up, drove down, spent a couple hours, came home. I mean, we were there.
You spent a couple hours at Buc-ee's?
Well, I mean, it was pretty crowded, but yeah,
Was there a line to get in?
Oh, no, not to get in, but it was crazy. When we were there at 6:15 yesterday or 2 mornings ago, and honestly, at 9:15 last night, it was.
I've been to Buc-ee's at 3 a.m. and it's still busy.
I have not done that. There was not a lot of people at 6:15 in the morning, and it was pretty cool. And so we walked in, and Melissa's like, "This is how I like it." And I said, "I kind of forget how big this place is when it's not full of people." But so I eat pretty plain. So I hate when places just put random sauces on something. Like I don't need your creamy chipotle sauce on my burrito. But Buc-ee's has finally done the thing. And this has been, I mean, I have literally thought about this and I'm going, this is the greatest thing that they have added in a long time. And you're going to be.
I'm rolling my eyes. I know we're not on video.
I know.
But.
And they have created a brisket burrito. It is because I've just thought the whole time I'm going, man, you're from Texas. Like your business is from Texas. Like that, you know, burritos are pretty prevalent there. I mean, you should have a lunch. You have all kinds of breakfast burritos, but you have no brisket lunch burritos. And they have created this burrito that has got brisket, refried beans, potatoes, cheese, and creamy chipotle sauce.
For only $17.
I think it's $7.89 or something like that, which is still a lot for a burrito.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And I understand it's brisket. And the thing I think you and I would both say is it is not typical gas station food, but on some level, it's still gas station
It's
food.
not, but here's the problem is that when you go to a really expensive restaurant that I've only been like once or twice in my life to where they don't put the prices on the menu because if you can afford to eat there, you don't care about the price.
Yeah.
Buc-ee's somehow thinks that that's them, that they're this fine dining establishment that they don't need to put the price on anything that they have. And so I had one time I was speaking at an engagement in Nashville, actually, and on my way back, I stop at the Buc-ee's
in Crossville.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to grab my dinner on the road right here at Buc-ee's. I've heard people talk about how great their brisket sandwich is, and they have billboards every 25 feet about their beaver nuggets. And so I'm going to go in. So I go in, I grab a brisket sandwich off of their little thing that has no price on it because Buc-ee's thinks that they're fine dining. And they had no price on this thing. I grab the small bag of beaver nuggets, and I get one of their fountain drinks that are like 99 cents.
Yeah.
And so I go up to the register and I hand I've got 3 items.
$740.
Put it up there. And the lady says $21.14 or whatever. And I looked at her, I said, no, I think you scanned something 2 or 3 times. She said, no, you had this. I said, no, that can't be right. There's no way. And I said, how much is the sandwich? She said, well, the sandwich is $18 and then your beaver nuggets are $32 and your drink is only 89 cents. So you got a great deal there.
But they gave you 50% off if the stuff was that much.
That's ridiculous, man. It's a gas station.
So it's the food, the breakfast sandwich. The breakfast sandwich is actually kind of, I do think they're expensive. They range from
everything's expensive,
like $6.99 to like $9 to get the breakfast stuff. Even just brisket tacos, like brisket egg tacos, is like $7. But the sandwiches are like, I mean, they have a double brisket that I think's maybe $10 or $11, but their stuff's, you know, $6 and $8.
That's just for the sandwich. That's not for a combo.
It is. No, there's no combos. But
a la carte, just like a fancy restaurant.
Just like a fancy restaurant. I will give you that. So anyway, hey, so as we transition to actually something maybe people care about, and like my wife listened to the episode with our friend Matt, which she said was so good, but she said, I'm scarred for life because she said, I will never, she's like, Tony and his story that he shared about falling down with a sock in a closet. She said, I will never be able to unsee those images.
I thought I had pulled a Jason Tatum right there.
Man, I tell you, I'm so broke. We don't have time to get into sports. I'm so broken right now. Like I'm just blown away that we're down 3-1 in this series.
Here's the deal, though. Can we just talk about this really quick? Because this ties in to, I think
we don't do anything really quick.
I think this ties into what we're talking about today very, very loosely. I mean, incredibly loosely, but we're going to try to make a transition. You have Jason Tatum, for those that are not sports fans listening to this show. Jason Tatum is an all-NBA player, probably one of the top 5, top 8 players in the National Basketball Association, plays for the Boston Celtics, and they're in the playoffs. And in the last minute of a loss that they had to the New York Knicks the other night, he had a non-contact injury that as soon as he went down and they showed the replays, I said to my son, I said, he just tore his Achilles. You could tell he didn't turn his ankle where he was grabbing non-contact, watching the way that his foot kind of vibrated when they showed the replay over and over and over. I said that's an Achilles. He's not only done for the rest of this series,
Based
which
on
will
an
only
athlete,
be one more game.
You know, being an athlete that plays at a pretty similar level as Jason, it could have been a spontaneous rupture of his plantar fascia. Like I've experienced that same level of struggle, and so I really grieved with him.
It could have, but so he's laying on the court, writhing in agony,
in tears,
and they had to carry him off the court, put him in a wheelchair, and wheel him off to the locker room. Okay, this is Jason Tatum. A few years ago, Kobe Bryant ruptures his Achilles. He stays on the court, shoots his 2 free throws, and pushes away the people that have come to carry him off and walks off the court under his own power. Exact same injury. He missed the entire next season almost because of a ruptured Achilles. Same thing that Tatum had. But one guy has to be carried off of the court. The other guy stays in the game to shoot his free throws and says, no, I've got this. I think it's just a mentality thing. And they talk about the Mamba mentality, that I think that he just had this mentality that I'm not letting myself be defeated by anything.
Kobe and Jordan had way, way, way different levels of things. And somebody I think that's interesting is I'd be interested to see what Ant-Man would do.
And I'm not saying situation. That Tatum's like a wimp or something. If it was like me, that, I'd be rolling on the floor screaming and crying and say, bring the ambulance out onto the court.
He actually used his good foot to help get himself off the court. They'd have had to have brought the ambulance onto the court, hauled me off. Like it would have not have been good. Yeah, I'm just it's a weird thing when you see guys that I don't know, are they broken a little bit in their brain? I don't know what it is, but I'd be interested to see, because I think about who would be that way now. It would not be LeBron.
Oh no.
And
no.
And I'm not a LeBron, as my boys say. I'm not a LeBron glazer. I'm not a LeBron fan. I'm not going to, and I admit that, but I will give him respect where it's due. And he has had a long career. He has found a way in this NBA to continue to be dominant at an incredibly high level at an age when most people are like icing their knees just to get out of bed in the morning. He's showing up and he's dominating games still as a 40-something-year-old player. Very Tom Brady-esque in what he's doing with the NBA.
If you had seen me in basketball practice yesterday, I'm turning 47 soon, and I was dominating.
You were.
So I don't give much credit to LeBron for that.
I'll have to come run with you guys one day, and I'm not very fast though. So, but I'll come run with you guys one. It'd be fun. I'd love to do that. I just think that I'd be interested to see, like, what would Ant-Man do, Anthony Edwards, in that situation. Like, he's probably the closest thing to a guy that seems to have that I'm a little broken in the head, Jordan Kobe mentality. Like, they literally said one of the assistant coaches has been doing nothing but showing him like 1992 to 94 Jordan videos to get that break. So no, I'm with you. Mentality is a big deal, and I think that how do you fight through things? How do you learn and grow? And I'll promise you this: I don't send my boys a lot of videos of Jason Tatum talking about basketball, but I still send them videos of Kobe Bryant talking about what it means to be elite, what it means to work hard. And I always tell them, it's like, maybe you make it in sports, maybe you don't.
And I think the thing about Kobe is that his lessons, his life lessons and his videos and everything were universal. Yeah. That he never stopped learning and growing. Even when his playing days were done and he hung up the sneakers, he continued to try to better himself. He didn't stop getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the gym. He didn't stop putting everything that he had into everything that he did, and was constantly trying to learn and grow and become better at his craft, even though his craft had changed in some areas. he still wanted to grow as a person, as a husband, as a father, as a business leader, as an entrepreneur. And everything that he did, he was constantly trying to figure things out. He never thought that he had arrived. As arguably the best player in the NBA for several years, he never thought, I've arrived. He was constantly pushing, constantly trying to learn, and constantly trying to grow. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, is what we're learning, but what we're still figuring out. In, as you know, I'm in the second half of my fourth decade. You're
about to clip into the fifth one later this year.
Yeah. And so we should have it figured out by now.
Yeah.
You would think. We're both, you're getting ready to graduate your second son. I've graduated multiple children and getting ready to marry off one in a couple of weeks. You would think that we have this thing figured out. But the thing that I'm learning day in and day out is that I don't have it figured out at all. And in fact, I've got so much to learn. I probably have more to learn and more to grow now than I thought that I did when I was in my 20s.
Well, I think it's one of the things that's interesting. We were talking before the show, and Brody had his last high school soccer match last night. They lost in the first round of the regional tournament. Incredibly close game. It was 4-3 with just a few minutes left, and they were attacking, and then kind of a rough situation, ended up having a goal go in, and they lost 5-3. But this what I'm about to say, like you and I have talked about, like, live with the end in mind. I mean, I actually preached a sermon a year or so ago where I brought a skull, and I talked about the fact that 6th century monks prayed not to, but towards a human skull to remind themselves that life was fleeting, that things come to an end, that our time on this earth is temporary. And there is something past that, and they wanted to think about and move in that direction. And I want to think about that way. Out of respect to my wife, that skull sits in a box, but it is there next to my bed, and it's in a box, and she doesn't have to look at it, but I see the box, and I'm trying to think through and process those things. And so with that, I literally preached sermons about this, but I'm driving home last night, and I'm going, man, that was in my brain. It's kind of quiet in the van for a few minutes as B was just kind of getting his thoughts together. And it's crazy as your kids start to graduate and they start to have to deal with more adult things. And that's one of them. Your last high school game, you're typically 18. So the world considers you adult, even though your brain and your prefrontal cortex is still a few years away from developing. And as I was driving, I was sitting there and I'm going, if we'd have won tonight, and we'd have won Thursday, we'd have played Saturday. And if we won Saturday, we'd have gone to state. And if we'd have won 3 games at state, we would have been state champions. And you know what would have happened on the way home? It would have been over. At the end of the day, things end. Something that I know well. And I still sat in a place where I'm going, how do I parent differently? How do I? And so, like, there are these moments where even the things we know, sometimes even how much the Father loves us, because we still have, I'm a very flawed, broken dad. And unfortunately, my boys have to learn how to see God as a perfect father through all of my brokenness. And that's hard sometimes. And so, no, I agree 100% with, we get to these spaces and moments where we have some things that we know well. We preach it. We teach it to children or students. We teach it to our own kids. We try and train ourselves to think through and process in that way personally. And then you get to a point where you're sitting here going and you're grieving, or you're kind of lamenting a space, and you go, even best case scenario, this was over in a week.
Yeah.
One way or another, this was going to end. And so, like I said, that's just one illustration, but we could do that for 1,000 things if we just wanted to sit here and start rolling things off.
So what is something that you've been learning about yourself lately?
What's funny is that concept has been the thing. I've my kids. I'm in a really unique space where I've got 2 kids that are 14 months apart. And so, you're graduating the 19 and counting over here, getting ready to get one married and all those things. And I've got one that's in college who is kind of drifter when he has the moments, and he just kind of goes, and he's, gone all summer for the next 13 weeks. He's gone and he's out. And I've got two more that very quickly are going to graduate and move on to other things in life. And I'm sitting here and I'm going, and this thing really does come to an end. As a parent, like the next phase happens so fast. One day they need you and you're doing all of these moments. Melissa was posting pictures, and Brody at 4 years old out there playing soccer, and he needed us for literally everything. He needed us to buy the soccer ball. He needed us to get his uniform. He needed us to sign him up. He needed us to handle, to run his schedule, everything. And literally this year, like there's moments where it's like, so what time are we leaving? He's like, well, I have to be here at this time. And he was running his entire schedule. He's worked some jobs. He has money. He gets his own car fixed. He goes and if he wants a soccer ball, he buys it. If he wants a good golf hat, he goes online and looks and goes to their store and like, oh, here's a couple of discounts, and he buys his own hat. He gets his own sneakers. I mean, he does all of these things on his own. And it was such a slow fade. I think Casting Crowns sings that in a kind of a different thing, but it was such a slow moving fade to this thing of this transition, this film dissolve of the movie, that all of a sudden I am needed differently, but it feels like so much less. And so that's something that I've really been sitting in a lot recently, of how do I parent in a new phase? How do I be a better husband in a new phase? How do I support? Because I mean, these things, like Mel's done great. Like she didn't cry until she was in the car, and she got away from spaces. She didn't drag the boys. She would say she didn't drag the boys down, even though they expect her to be emotional. Like, how do we navigate handling the dogs? And, tonight, I mean, there's no Landon, there's no Brody and Colby. And she's like, what are we doing for dinner? And I'm going, I have no clue, because we always cook for 5. And now we're just cooking for 2. And I'm going, this is our life sooner than later. And things just change so quick. And I'm trying to navigate this. One of my favorite phrases, and people will be like, oh, Robert's talking about seasons again, is things just come in seasons, and we're in a season of transition, and I'm just reminded how quickly that can come, and it's something I've been navigating. What about you? Because like we talk a lot, but I'm sure that maybe some of the things you're navigating through I may not really know about.
Yeah, I think the thing that I'm working through lately is I'm realizing just how much in life I confuse movement with progress. That I think that just because I'm busy doing stuff for God, it doesn't mean that I'm actually becoming the person that he wants me to become.
That's really good.
And I think that that's something that I've struggled with for a lot of time, that busyness, we tend to think that busyness is equal to growth, that busyness is moving us forward, but busyness could just be noise. It could just be noise. And so trying to really look at my life and say, what are the things that are growing me and not just noise in my life?
Man, that is incredibly deep. I just feel like I need moments to reflect in that, but nobody wants to sit in silence and let me reflect.
Well, but I think that sometimes God's greatest work happens when in silence. I think that sometimes God's greatest work happens when there's nothing happening around us.
I think it's one of the tensions, and most of us, because none of us like discipline, but it's the spiritual disciplines. And I mean, and what we're, one of those that we see Jesus model is this solitude. And he gets away in the quiet, in the silence, in the solitude, and for prayer and reflection and communing with the Father. And we're in such a world of noise. And I don't know. I don't always know how to shift that in my life, which was part of for me, the thing of the Lent thing that I did was just trying to slow the noise. And, that continues to create tension, and that's a great thought.
Yeah. Is there a moment recently that you've had where God reminded you of something that you thought that you already knew?
I think I probably shared two questions in one. I think that driving thing last night, I mean, it literally was last night, and I was reflecting on what we were going to talk about today, and I was processing through, and I don't know that I even connected all the dots because I didn't have the manuscript in front of me and looking at the questions, but just knowing what we were talking about, and I'm thinking, what am I learning? What am I doing? And in that, I just think that revelation of I'm really good to talk about things and really do my best to live them out. Like the end in mind thing, but I sometimes get to a point where I know the end is coming, and especially, I don't know, we talk about this. We both love our kids and our wives and things so much, and I just look at my kids, and sometimes I just go, would I really want to go back? I would love to have them as just like Melissa and I talking, like we loved that at that age when it was like 8, 4, and 3. It was just a special season. Yeah. And I'm like, but I love where we're at now as well. And I told Mel the other day, like we're seeing our boys go through some really high highs and some complicated, not necessarily lows. I mean, it's a soccer match. The world doesn't end, but it's still emotion.
Sure.
And I'm watching our boys like call Melissa and want to be on FaceTime and want to watch part of the game, that they're texting and they're going, what's happening here? And I'm going, okay, there's a lot of things growing. And so it's such a beautiful space that we're in right now. And I think that's one of the things for me that I'm kind of just being reminded of, is that for me, the conversation is always like, the end is coming and look at all the good. But sometimes the end of one season, I mean, we all love fall. The leaves are pretty. We love death. But spring brings this new life. And I know that fall is really pretty, but it's really things dying. And God's bringing something new to life. And again, this season, I'm reminded of that. And it just kind of challenges me to, again, how do I love my family well? How do I love my wife well? And how do I help my boys? Because I think the scriptures call us to, we don't really ever stop parenting. Yeah. We just parent differently.
Sure.
So how, you went super crazy deep over there, and it was like, my transformation into the likeness of Jesus. And so how about you with that same question?
I'm a control freak.
What? Oh, sorry. I shouldn't.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm in Controllers Anonymous right next to your Bucky's Anonymous. But I think I'm learning that control is a myth. And I am a control freak. I say that I trust God. I say that I trust Jesus, but I keep trying to run the show of my life. This past weekend, I had to drive up to Chattanooga to go with I didn't have to, I wanted to go with my oldest daughter to a cardiologist appointment. And she's been having some problems. They've been running a bunch of tests, doing 2 different 2-week sessions with a heart rate monitor. And so we sit in the cardiologist appointment where they say that she needs to have a heart ablation. They're going to actually go in and burn spots on her heart and try to take care of this and stop her from the issues that she's having. And I'm trying to control the situation. And I'm like, okay, well, what about this? What about, I've read this, and I'm saying this to a cardiologist, right? Me as dad, who
you're holding up your phone saying on Google.
This is exactly what I'm doing. It's exactly what I'm doing. And this cardiologist and my daughter just keeps patting me on the leg. I'm like, Dad, it's okay. It's okay. I'm like, no, I want to control the situation, but I can't control the situation. I need to relinquish control to someone else that knows more, that has a broader view of the situation. My view of the situation is narrowly focused. I'm only seeing it through the lens of a dad who's concerned about his daughter. And she sees it, the cardiologist sees it through a much wider lens. And much more peripheral view on this situation, but it's hard for me to give up that control to that. I've listened to a podcast about this issue of control, and the guest on the podcast said control is simply just anxiety with better PR. And like, wow, I love that statement. that control is simply just anxiety with better public relations department. And I think there's a lot to that. And the thing that I'm trying to embrace, the thing that I'm trying to speak to myself over and over and over again is that God doesn't need me to have control. He needs me to surrender control to him. And that's hard for a control freak. Even though I know that in my heart, it's hard to let go of that in my mind and in my head and say that I'm going to truly trust and relinquish control of some things that I know that I have no control of anyways. So control is a myth. That's the big thing that I'm trying to grow in, and something that I've known, but I didn't think I quite understood the way that I think God is trying to reveal that to me now.
I think it's interesting because when someone that like you that will go, hey, control is my thing, a lot of people go, I'm not very controlling. It's like, I don't really care about decision. And I think sometimes we look at it like passivity is we don't have this desire to see things controlled. But just because we maybe aren't engaged in bigger decisions and we go, we still have that in these small, minute moments. And so that's really a powerful thing that I think every person can take away. That what's the public relations? What are the things you do to PR away something in your life every day?
Yeah.
Like, what are you like creating? What are you putting out there to try and make everybody think something about you that isn't true because you're trying to control a narrative and trying to control a situation and it doesn't mean that you're trying to fix your family's health problems or that you're trying to, launch 17 businesses this year, or it doesn't have to be something that's some crazy grandiose scale. It could be the fact of that you're wanting to lose 10 pounds and you keep talking to people, but your PR department is covering the fact that you're eating 3 tubs of ice cream a week. And and there's just things that we're trying to control things in our life, but yet we've got these deep rooted, basically sins and struggles that we sit in that we're covering up and doing. And just inside of that cover up, we're never going to find healing. That's really good stuff.
Hey, let's have a quick word from our sponsor and then we'll keep going.
At Higher Ministries, they believe strong leaders build strong ministries. That's why they're committed to empowering pastors and ministry leaders with the tools they need to succeed. Whether you're navigating challenges or looking to expand your impact, their team can guide you every step of the way. Check out higherministries.com and discover how they can support your ministry journey.
So I love this passage in scripture that talks about different stages that we have in life. And it's one of those that we see on crocheted things in people's bathrooms that, it says that we will rise up on wings like eagles.
Y'all.
And
like
that's
eagles, y'all.
That's the verse that we love to focus on, but we don't realize that there are other verses that go in that passage that it says before that, sometimes we will run and not grow weary. Sometimes we will walk and not faint.
And we all know that verse because of Remember the Titans.
Yeah, exactly.
And they sing it very poorly.
But so we have these different seasons. I thought you were about to break into song.
No, I'm going to save everybody from that.
So we have these different seasons of life. And I think that we all have seasons where we feel like we're really growing in the spirit, that we're caught up, we're soaring on wings like eagles. But then there are other times when it feels like all we can do is run and not grow weary. And then there are other times when it feels like, man, we're barely walking without fainting. It's taking all of our energy, everything that we have, to put one foot in front of the other. How do you handle seasons when you feel like your growth isn't happening in the way that you would maybe like it to, or it's not happening at all?
I think it's Tom Petty that says waiting's the hardest part. We all have this hope, this desire that things will align and connect and move and lean into the way that we want them to go. And you kind of alluded to this earlier, we have such a way of thinking about things, and God doesn't move at the pace we move, and getting to a place that we can start to trust him with how this comes together. But I mean, we had a conversation right before, and it's not something that, excuse me, I'm sorry. Something that we can talk about on air, but we had a conversation right before about some things just some things I'm bumping into right now, and some situations, some tension. And it really comes down, a lot of it, to, I'm not fully trusting that what God's plan might be, or that God will work this out in his time, is what I'm trying to say. I need him to work it out now. I need him to make things clear. I need him to come through in this moment to bring this situation to some closure and move on to the next season, because that's the only way he can get glory, is to do it the way I'm thinking. And I think that's the hardest thing for me, is that when I'm trying to, I love how you worded the question, is like, how do you handle seasons? And that's the problem, is I'm trying to handle the season. And
that's coming back to my control. Even my control,
it really is
the questions that I write for our show.
Well, and I mean, but it's what I think we all do this. I can say I trust God all I want to. I can say I'm following Jesus all I want to. I can genuinely say I want the Spirit to speak to me. But when the Spirit speaks, and I get that little, still small voice, or that tug, or that move that's going, hey, you know what's right. You know what the next step should be. Hey, you need to step through this thing, this door, this situation, this moment. I mean, Mel and I were talking, excuse me, just yesterday, and she was just like, is there a moment where God's going to make something clear and then we step? Or is there a moment where we just have to step and go, he provides or he doesn't? Like, he provides in a way that we want, that we think he will, or we have to have a lot more faith on the other side of the decision, but we're being obedient. And I think that's the hard thing for me.
I do a lot of work with people one-on-one.
That's good. Robots probably don't need your help.
Yeah.
They got captions for that.
I mean, I do try and interact quite a bit with Siri and Alexa. But I do a lot of working with leaders, pastors, business leaders one-on-one. And I think that's one of the biggest questions that I get is, why am I not seeing growth? Why am I not seeing movement? And they get frustrated. And often when we get frustrated, we tend to quit. When we don't see the progress as quickly as we would like, we tend to quit. And so one of the things that I try to say to people all the time is, stop measuring growth by the day. Stop measuring growth by the week. Stop measuring growth even by the month. Measure growth by the decade. That growth oftentimes is a slow process. But slow growth is still growth. Just ask a tree. It takes a while for growth to take place sometimes. And we can get so discouraged and frustrated when we're not seeing the type of growth that we want to see at the rate that we want to see it. But when you can step back, reevaluate your measures and redefine your measures, that I'm not looking at what's happening between now and next week, but what's happening over the course of a year, maybe a decade, that I really think that helps us to reframe our view and see that process takes incrementally slow periods of time.
We always talk about with family and things like that, the days are long, but the years are short. And I think it's almost a little bit of that same mantra inside of leadership. We tend to overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. We tend to overestimate what should happen in a day in our life. Not that God can't.
Well, and God's not in a hurry, even when I am.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things. And we talk about,
God's not a speeder, Robert.
He's not. And really, like, part of the reason for me with starting to watch my speed is a thing of trying to not be in a rush. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I'm looking at and I see inside of leadership and inside of my life and inside of my friends, is not that God doesn't want to move, is that God isn't moving. And God, not that God doesn't want to move, not that he isn't moving. It's that he's not moving at the pace we feel like he should. And because he's not in a hurry, but we are, we just tend to step down roads and paths that create so much trouble and tension that require immense amounts of repair and things. And I'll just be really transparent. I don't know how to do some of this right now.
And just to be clear, you're not alone in that. I'm not alone in that.
Sure.
This has been a problem throughout all of human history.
Yeah.
We were talking beforehand about the life of David before we started recording. David spent 10 years running for his life, hiding in caves and in the wilderness, running from Saul when he knew that he was supposed to be the king. He was told he was going to be the next king of Israel. And yet for 10 years, he's running and waiting for this to happen. God is in the process of simmering. You look at when the Israelites left Egypt, they're promised a land of their own, a place of prominence and power. They didn't think that was going to take 40 years for them doing that. You look at the disciples immediately. As soon as they're called and they're in Jesus's ministry, they go, an entire town has gathered outside of a house to see Jesus. And the disciples are all excited because, like, man, you're this Messiah guy who's going to come and overthrow Rome and restore us to our place of power. And we're going to be right there beside you as your guys. And they can't find Jesus anywhere because, just as you were saying earlier, he's off by himself praying quietly, and they come and find him. And they're so excited. The entire town is here to come see you. Everybody's here. You're a big deal already. You've got newspapers here, reporters here. Everyone wants to talk to you. And he says, let's go somewhere else. Like, no. You don't understand. If you're trying to build a kingdom, this is exactly how we want to launch it. We've got a press conference set up. Everything's ready. He says, no, let's go somewhere else. And they can't figure this out because they want it to happen quick. This is the story all throughout Scripture and all throughout human history, is hurry up and wait for God to do what he's wanting to do in your life.
And I think, and so in that, the thing that I'm trying to figure out to be a better follower of Jesus, a better leader, a better husband, father, is, how do I not hurry up and wait? How do I just wait? How do I sit with him? And so for me, that's why some of the slowing down and things and not the speeding and not watching as much TV and not doing this and not doing that is, how do I make things a little more quiet? How do I practice the ways of Jesus in a way that helps me and trains me to be more attuned to what he's doing and how he's doing it? And it's just, I wish I'd started this when I was 14, not 49, but it's a slower process because I've got a lot of years of bad habits that are really ingrained in and kind of set in place. And so it's a really slow, kind of painful process, but it's something that I believe is worthwhile and going there. So I guess in that same thought, how do you, like, misconceptions? I kind of talked about that a little bit. And some of these things, again, it's just, I think I've just got a story that kind of hit, and some of it seems pretty fresh. And for me, it just rolls through this. But when you're looking at your own life, when you're looking at scriptures, when you're meeting with other leaders, what about you, that misconception that people have about growth, both spiritually, emotionally, professionally, personally, kind of all those things?
Yeah, I think that growth always feels good. I think we tend to think that if we're growing, that's going to be a good thing, that's going to feel good. But back to the slow process, ask a tree about pruning. That sometimes growth is painful. Sometimes growth hurts. Sometimes growth it feels like pruning. In fact, I want to go so far as to say that if it's not uncomfortable, it's probably not growth.
I would agree with that. Not that you need me to, but I would agree with that statement.
Yeah.
I mean, think about from if people could see us, you work out more than I do. But when you ask anyone who works out, part of the process of working out is tearing the muscles and tearing down things to build them back up stronger.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in so many areas of our life. Things are designed to go through some pain, some struggle, some pruning, some tearing to get to a healthier, better place than it was.
Yeah. And we've got a really bad analogy that we've been filtering through, but it's actually an analogy that Jesus uses, you know, that he is the vine, we are the branches.
I was like, I need your Bible. If I'm the vine, that's going to help me a lot with my decision
making.
He's
the vine, we are the branches. And there's
you don't make a lot of mistakes. I got to call you out. I got to make fun when you do.
There's pruning and shaping that needs to take place, and we don't just bear fruit.
But the word that every one of us at some point in time has taught a series about, and we've wrapped this thing around, is abide. And it goes back to the silence, the solitude, the sitting with the Father, the disciplines. Discipline is not comfortable.
Yeah, you're going to ESV with the abide. I prefer more the NIV or New American Standard, the remain. You know, so
yeah, I think actually does King James use abide as well? I feel like I've heard abide a lot, and so I think it might be in King James as well. I'd have to look that up, but But no, remain, abide, sit, like be with, and I think that we just don't navigate that part of it really, really well.
I would agree with that. I know I don't. I want growth to be a beautiful thing.
I want growth to be a fast thing. I'm gonna be honest. I would take a couple of pimples if it could be fast. I mean, it's ideal if it's perfect, but if there's a couple of blemishes, I just want to know. I want to know where it's going and what I'm getting to.
But I also think we talk about the slow process, that you get to a place, to go back to your analogy of working out and tearing of muscle fibers and all of that goes away. And so I aspire to work out 5-6 days a week. It doesn't usually happen that way, but that's my aspiration. That's my goal each week as I go into it. And with that, I've been doing this for years. I don't get sore very often when I'm working out anymore because my muscles are used to it. But every once in a while, I'll have a great workout and I'll wake up the next morning and I've done something different. I've changed something in the routine and my muscles are sore again. And it hurts, but it feels so good, because you know that growth is taking place.
Mm-hmm. The King James just say, bud. Sorry, I need to know. No, I agree 100%.
You heard nothing that I just said.
No, I did. I mean, because some days you have a good workout and you wake up and you're sore and it's painful. And those are moments where, like, whether it's a pickup game of basketball and I go a little bit harder and I'm trying to push myself, and I find myself when I get up out of the chair, I'm moving a little slower for the first couple of steps. And I'm like, I could have gone easier today. I could have jumped less. I could have ran less. I could have let the young kids do the fast break, but I get out there and I run with them and I exert a little extra energy. And I feel that your analogy is a lot better with, I mean, the muscles and the tearing and things like that. But it's all these moments and things in life that we can exert and put out the energy that it takes to get because that's really what this comes down to. Kobe Bryant, to go back to the analogy with him, and I think we've talked about this before. You and I have talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it on the air, but he talks about, and I send this to my boys all the time. He's like, if you're out there and you're doing two workouts a day in the summer, then, you're probably keeping up with other really good players. But if you get up early in the summer instead of sleeping in and you get a 6 a.m. workout, and then you come back and you rest a little bit and you do a couple of things and you get an 11, and then you go and you get a 4 and you go back and do something else, maybe light or another workout. He's like, at 7, you got 4 workouts in a day. You're not going to see, and this is the thing I love. He says, he's like, you're not going to go from the player you are to the player you want to be in a week. But if you'll do that routine every day for 6 months, you still may not be the best player in the gym, but you're going to be a better player. And people are going to start to notice, the people who matter, that things that are fundamental, things that are core, things that are key, you're looking a little different. Your body's a little bigger. You're doing some things. Your shot's a little stronger. You're focused on. They're going to focus on the things that you're doing well. And then in a year, you still may not be the best player in the gym, but you'll be a lot better than you were. And people are going to go, this is one of the best players on our team. And he said, it just takes time. He said, for some people, they're genetic freaks. And if they put in that level of work, they're going to become the best player in 3 months. For some people, most people, it's a slow movement to that, but it requires the daily effort of the consistency of doing those things. And I think that's just, I know it's where I fall short. And so many is we're just not willing to put in the 4 workouts a day. Why would I want to get up at 5 a.m. to read my Bible when I could get an extra hour of sleep and I can stay up till midnight playing video games or watching TV or doing this? Why go to bed at 11 so that I can get up at 5 and start my day in a healthier place? That doesn't make sense because that's uncommon to culture. And I think that's the problem is we want to be common to what culture does, not common to what the Father writes in scriptures. We want easy all the time.
Well, that is all the time that we have for this edition of the Pulpit and Porch. And we hope that you've enjoyed our discussion of part 1 of what we're learning and what we're still figuring out. We will continue this conversation next week, so you definitely want to tune into that as we ask some more hard questions and hopefully give some more difficult answers on what do you do when growth feels slow? What do you do to stay grounded? And how do you stay grounded to your calling even when it feels like God isn't moving at the speed that you want? We do want to thank you again for tuning in and hope that you will join us in this conversation by subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, going and liking the Pulpit and Porch on Facebook, following us on Instagram, and commenting on our different posts that we put out on the different social medias. We do want to thank our sponsor, Higher Ministries, and ask that you would visit them as they can help you in guidance and direction if you're asking some of these same questions that we have asked. Have a great rest of your week. We'll continue this conversation next week on the Pulpit and Porch.